In this video, we will talk about measuring the speed of a website and some common concepts around the speed test of a website. So, the very easy and the most common way of performing a speed test is to simply pull up your Chrome console. So, you go on a page, right click on inspect, and once you're on the page, you simply click on this tab called Lighthouse. Now, once you've clicked on it, you can choose the device you want to do the speed test for. So it's either a desktop or a mobile. You can choose to ignore everything except the performance and leave the test as navigation. Once you click on Analyze Page Load, it runs through the speed test, and after it's done the speed test, it'll load up the results on the page. So we'll give that a minute. Google does give you some stats as it's performing the speed test. And now you can see that Google's pointed out that the performance of this page is measured 88 out of 100. Now, you can see there's some numbers displayed here, 6 major numbers displayed here. First, contentful paint, the speed index, the largest contentful paint, time to interactive, total blocking time, and CLS or cumulative layout shift. The common ones, the most important ones for us are the FCP, which is the first contentful paint, the speed index, and time to interactive. The remaining three, obviously, from a perspective of optimizing your site for speed, are important. But just to understand what's going on in the site, these three numbers are the ones that will really paint the picture. As the name suggests, first contentful paint is very straightforward. Is when the website, when visually the website's uh, layout or canvas starts to paint itself. So if it, at any point in time, as you can see, these screenshots here it's the progressive screenshotting of how the website is loading. As soon as the canvas starts to paint itself, so that's the off-white color. So that's either the canvas images or any other sort of resources. That's what it measures. Ideally, you want this number to be below 1.2 seconds. And as you can see, because it's below 1.2, it gives a score of zero point 0.6 seconds. Speed index is measured as, the time it takes to load all your resources. And Google will then compare it to other websites' speed index or other websites' load times, as measured from a number of websites that it gets from HTTP archives. And then time to interactive is when the website becomes fully interactive. So if you have drop down menus or you have moving sliders or any form of interactivity on the page, it takes 3 seconds for this site to fully load. Now, this report gives you additional information as to what other things you can do to fix these things or improve your speed. So obviously it says, reduce the initial server response time, don't load the images or defer loading of the off-screen images, reduce unused CSS, eliminate render blocking resources like JavaScript, and properly size images. So obviously we'll look into these in some other video, but we get a score of 88 out of 100. Now, you really want to be able to get the score really high as possible. Obviously, beyond the 89, it's to the 90 is when it really hits that green button. Now, how does this impact your performance on Google? So obviously, speed is one of the most important factor. Google's gone on record and obviously put out a lot of tools for you to be able to measure the speed of your site, and it's placed a lot of emphasis on speed as one of the main factors in how it ranks website. Obviously, a slow website will be a bad user experience, and people are more likely to bounce. A fast website is in turn a good user experience, and people are likely to stick around or view more pages. Now, what are some of the other tools? So the same way that we loaded this, Chrome Dev tool to load up the Lighthouse report, you could also run the same report on page speed insights or pagespeed.web.dev URL, where you put in the URL and you simply click on analyze. Remember, you can run this report for any page on your site and not necessarily just the home page. I'm demonstrating to you that I'm demonstrating this test for the purposes of the home page, but I could easily run this for one of the internal pages that I think is too long or is loading slow, and find out the root causes of what is causing that slow load time. So in this case, you can see Google has now suggested that the first contentful paint is happening at 2.2 second, averages load at about 5.1 second, and it takes all the way to 8.4 seconds for this page to become interactive. Obviously, it makes similar suggestions, says reduce unused JavaScript, some of it which are loaded from third-party domains, remove unused CSS, eliminate render blocking resources, and so on and so forth. Now, if you wanted to perform speed test for multiple websites at the same time, let's say you're doing a client presentation, or you want to just see how other people are performing compared to you or your competitors. This is the tool you want to use, which is called batchspeed.com. You just go to this URL list, type in the list of the URLs. So I'd say weboptimizers.com.au. I'll put in, let's say for an example, this one here, and I'll put in one more. So let's say if I put in, CNN.com, let's put that in. And then I run test, and I have to wait a little bit because it obviously uses the same technology. It uses API from Google PageSpeed Insights, and then runs the test for you. And as it runs, as you can see, you have to wait a minute before it can load all the URLs and the results of all the tests. Now, while this test is running, I'll show you one other tool, which is called the Pingdom, tools.pingdom.com. Pingdom.com is where you can actually put in the URL. So I'll just copy the URL again, go here, put the URL in, and I can choose the location from which I want to do the test. Now, I'm based in Melbourne in Australia, so I can obviously choose Pacific Australia, Sydney, because a lot of my users will be from Australia. But if you are in Europe or you are in North America, you obviously want to use that to be able to do the test. Now, let that test start. Now, while that test running, let's go back to batch speed. As you can see, I'm starting to see some scores. It says the tools.pingdom.com loads at 6.6 seconds. Web Optimizer loads at 4.9 seconds. Gives me the total size of the page. So that's 503 KB. In my case, it's 716 KB. Gives me an overall score of 51 out of 100. It does tell me what are some of the other things. So 86 KB worth of images, 376 KB worth of JS files, and so on and so forth. So as you can see, the CNN page is about 7.57 MB, has a 15 out of 100 score, and takes about 25.1 seconds to load, but it becomes fully interactive at 63.7 seconds. Obviously, a lot of work to do in terms of how CNN operates. Now, you can also see the desktop scores for the same, and you can see our score now goes to about 80. Pingdom goes to 91, and CNN goes to 11. Again, the sizes of the desktops are there as well. Now, it is quite possible that the size of the desktop is different to the size of the mobile because the modern CMSs or the modern websites have the ability to show uh, different sites on different devices or different sections of a page on different devices. So keep that in mind. Now, heading back to Pingdom, we notice that now it has given us a score of 76 out of 100 with a 1.1 MB page size loaded at 562 milliseconds. Gives similar kind of suggestions as the Google PageSpeed Insights, and talks about what are the things you can do to improve the speed. Now, let me put it this way. The browser is obviously the best way of measuring your speed because it actually tells you how your website performs for you as a user. And so the straightforward way is using the Lighthouse, and that's the browser performing the test for you. The second best is obviously running it through the Google servers because you want to see how Google crawls your site. I mean, you want to see how Google loads your site and how quickly can it load the site. And you obviously want to get this number as high as possible. And if you're getting good scores and just for uh, you know giggles, you want to have another test, you want to go to Pingdom tools.pingdom.com to be able to perform the test. It is a good idea to obviously optimize your site for speed, both for PageSpeed Insights and Lighthouse, or in general, to reduce the size of the page and optimize it for faster loading, because the faster your site, the more URLs and faster would be Google's ability to crawl it and optimize it for speed. So that's all from the perspective of how you can do speed test, how you can observe, how your website is performing, what scores you're getting, and what are the challenges or opportunities in order to optimize this site for speed.